Hello students, this is teacher Shirley DeCosta, your economics teacher, and I welcome you to yet another teaching learning resource titled Consumer's Equilibrium. With this video, I'm taking you forward with the theory of consumer behavior, and we are actually coming to the end of this chapter. In this teaching module, we will study about the concept of consumer's equilibrium, optimal choice of the consumer, and monotonic preferences. I hope you are eager to learn something new today. So let us move on. Before we go on with this topic and learn about consumer's equilibrium, we need to first refresh our memory about indifference curves. An indifference curve shows us those consumption bundles that give the consumer the same level of satisfaction. It expresses the desires of the consumer. In the indifference map, we have a collection of such curves. The lower indifference curve corresponds to lower income and satisfaction, and the higher indifference curve corresponds to higher levels of income and satisfaction. The next concept we need to revise is the budget line concept. So here's refreshing your memory on budget line. Budget line is a line showing different combinations of two goods which a consumer can buy given his budget and the prices of the two goods. Anywhere on the budget line, a consumer is spending his entire income either on good 1 or good 2, or both on good 1 and good 2. We need to now put the two concepts together, that is indifference curves and budget line, and determine the answer to which is the bundle the consumer ultimately chooses. What I mean to say is, given our understanding of indifference curves and our understanding of budget line, what is the optimal choice of the consumer? Which bundle does he choose finally? Let me give you an example to show you how that comes about. Now wear your thinking caps and let the engines roll. Here I have put up before you both the diagrams, that is the budget line and the indifference curve. On the budget line, we express those bundles which cost exactly equal to the budget. Inside are bundles which cost less than the budget. Here, on the other hand, you have the indifference curve. Now, this indifference curve really expresses what is the consumer's wish or desire. All these bundles on the indifference curve gives the consumer the same level of satisfaction. So whether he's on this point or the other or yet another, it makes no difference to him. All are the same to him. He is indifferent across all these combinations lying on a particular indifference curve that corresponds to a particular level of income and prices of good 1 and good 2. Now, keeping these two concepts in mind, we have to think about which bundle will the consumer ultimately choose. The next slide will help you to understand that. Let us now try to understand which is the consumption bundle the consumer is ultimately going to buy or choose, given his indifference curves, his indifferent preferences, and his budget line. Given all his consumption bundles that give him the same level of satisfaction, and his budget line which tells him how much he can afford to buy, what does he ultimately choose? In order to try to determine that, I will now superimpose the indifference curve onto this budget line diagram. When you see that happening, you will probably understand visually which is the ultimate choice of the consumer or optimal choice of the consumer, or which is the bundle he ultimately chooses. Let's do that and see what happens. Can you see what happened? There is a point that is common between the budget line AE and the indifference curve IC. The budget line AE is tangent to the indifference curve IC at the point Q. And it is at this point of tangency that the consumer chooses to buy 2 units of good 2 along with 2 units of good 1. On this point, he is within his budget limits. He can afford to buy the bundle represented by the point Q. I would like to say one more thing. Suppose the consumer was at this point, which I am showing you with a laser pointer, and there was another budget line passing through this point. Wouldn't you say that this particular bundle would be affordable only at a higher level of income? Yet, try to understand that the satisfaction he derives here and the satisfaction he derives at point Q is the same. That means even as he consumes 2 units of good 2 along with 2 units of good 1, he gets the same level of satisfaction if he was at this particular point, which would probably be attainable at a higher level of income. So don't you think that this is the optimal choice for the consumer? It definitely is. Let us move on. So what is the optimal choice of the consumer? Consumer equilibrium refers to optimal choice of the consumer. It is achieved when he maximizes his satisfaction spending his given income across 2 goods. In terms of indifference curve analysis, the consumer achieves his optimal choice when he strikes a balance between what he wishes to buy and what he can buy. So, the indifference curve expresses what he wishes to buy and the budget line expresses what he can buy. The consumer attains equilibrium at point Q. Here, the price line or the budget line is tangent to the IC curve and he maximizes his satisfaction at this point. He buys OL amount of good 2 and OM amount of good 1. Q is also called the optimum consumption point. Since Q is not only affordable but lies on the highest possible indifference curve. Let me explain to you what we mean by that in the next slide. On this diagram, I have shown both the indifference map as well as the budget line together. And the reason I have done this is to show you that there are other points which lie on the budget line but are not optimal choice of the consumer. Let us see why. The consumption bundles represented by point C and D on the indifference curve IC1 are not optimal choice of the consumer, though they lie on the budget line, because they lie on a lower indifference curve. Remember when I taught you about indifference map, I told you that at lower indifference curves correspond to lower levels of income and lower levels of satisfaction. Any bundle on IC2 is not possible because it is not within the budget. How do we know that? Because when we study the concept of budget line, we learned that any bundle represented outside the budget line is not affordable and not attainable. Let us read this again. Any bundle on the IC2 is not possible as it has no point of intersection with the budget line. None of the bundles on IC2 are within the budget, though they give a higher level of satisfaction. Therefore, the bundle represented by point Q is the optimal choice of the consumer. See, the bundle represented by point Q not only falls within the budget limits of the consumer, but it is also lying on a higher indifference curve than IC1. So why should the consumer be on IC1 when there is a possibility of being on a higher indifference curve, which is IC, that gives a higher level of satisfaction corresponding to a higher level of income. So therefore, this point Q is known as the optimal choice of the consumer. And last but not the least is a concept called monotonic preferences. What are monotonic preferences? Consumer preferences are assumed to be such that between two consumption bundles X1, X2 and Y1, Y2, if X1, X2 has more of one good and no less of the other good as compared to Y1, Y2, then the consumer prefers X1, X2 over Y1, Y2. Preferences of this kind are called monotonic preferences. You will understand better once we look at the example. Between bundle 2-2 and 1-2, if the consumer has monotonic preferences, the consumer will choose 2-2 over 1-2. Why? Because 2-2 has more of good 1 and equal amounts of good 2 as compared to 1-2. Let me repeat again. The bundle 2-2 has more quantity of good 1 than bundle 1-2, and it has equal quantities of good 2 as compared to the bundle 1-2. So I want you to think of more examples. For example, 3-4 and 3-3. 3-4 has more of good 2 as compared to bundle 3-3, and 3-4 has equal amounts of good 1 as compared to bundle 3-3. Similarly, you also will be able to come up with examples. When I'm evaluating your understanding of this topic, I will be able to gauge what you have understood through the examples that you generate. So I want you to try to generate your own examples and understand this concept clearly. In this lesson, we have learnt about the concept of consumer's equilibrium, optimal choice of the consumer, and monotonic preferences. Students, it would be nice if you would watch the video again. It will only help you to understand the topic even better. Thank you.